More than 2,000 sea lions, most of them helpless pups, have washed up along the southern California shore. Scientists say the animals are suffering from a scarcity of natural prey, forcing nursing mothers to venture further out for food as their young pups stay behind. Starving and stranded, their numbers reflect what Justin Visbicki of the National Marine Fisheries Service fears is a worsening phenomenon blamed on warming seas that have disrupted their food supply.
So currently off the coast of California, we have an estimated population of California sea lions that's right around 300,000. This year, since the beginning of January, we've had about 2,460 California sea lion pups come ashore all throughout the coast of California. Of those currently in-house as of the end of March, we had about 750 California sea lions in our facilities throughout the state.
Experts say the number of these stranded marine mammals is nearly 20 times the average level of strandings over the past decade. But the possibility of rescue and rehabilitation may be far more grim than many would expect.
It's very difficult, and I've had a lot of really tough heart-to-heart conversations with people on the phone trying to explain that we're doing our best, but the reality is with our limited resources, there's only so much that we can do. And after that, Mother Nature is going to take her course.
Normally, stronger winds would help pull in prey from the Pacific. Their food supply chains are now believed to be disrupted due to unusually mild winds along the west coast. And the number of stranded sea lions could be much higher, with estimated strandings only accounting for those found and brought to rescue centers. Many more are left to perish ashore alone.
So that's how the system works. Don't think it's an accident at all. See, we've gone from warning you this was all coming to now they've got the Asian Pacific Union, one piece of it leaked by WikiLeaks, ends internet freedom as we know. Obama's lining that up with the FCC now, globally. And the other 29 pieces, it's 33 pieces. So the other 32 pieces, they're not releasing and just saying, hey, you don't need to see it. Congress doesn't need to see it. This is over-the-top tyranny. And it's moving very, very quickly because the public is entertained to death. The public is in a mesmerized trance state medically. Just look it up. TV lowers brainwaves. Television associated with Alzheimer's. Television associated with lower IQ. The public is in a spectator mode, thinking that they've gotten away with something just being lazy, not knowing the real universe is going on around them, shuddered like a horse with blinders, not seeing the 360 view around them, just a narrow little globalist projected world. And our survival instinct is being destroyed. Learned helplessness and our normalcy bias is being expanded to where we'll put up with anything. And every historian, every PhD economist or anthropologist or sociologist, left, right, libertarian, says these are the global seeds of worldwide war, genocide, extermination, including here in America with 100 million people not in the workforce and articles everywhere about driverless cars, driverless planes. Notice it's all rolling out, and I told you 20 years ago it was coming. And then meanwhile, we have 430-something reactors that are used for power worldwide, a bunch of other institutional research reactors and secret reactors. And 90+% of them, even the UN and the federal government, the Atomic Energy Agency, all of them say 91, 92% are leaking. They don't even care now when they leak. In fact, a few years ago, San Diego and other areas had reactors nearby leaking, and the alarms would go off and scare people. So they just said, you know what? We're just going to turn the alarm off now. And look at these headlines. Fukushima radiation has reached North American shores. We're going to skip this network break coming up to give our guests more time. This is out of the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. It's in the Statesman Journal and others. Scientists at Woods Hole say that they're picking up cesium-134 and cesium-137 for the first time hitting the West Coast since the 2011 triple meltdown. Well, wait a minute. And they say nothing to worry about. And USA Today says that, and others say that. Well, funny, I've got from 2011, Forbes, radiation detected in drinking water in 13 more U.S. cities, cesium-137 in the Vermont milk. So they just raised the level of what they said was safe. Here's another one, RT, radiation level in tuna off Oregon coast, triple after Fukushima disaster. That's from 2014. Here's San Francisco, Gate, saying the same thing. Japan's radiation found in California, bluefin tuna. Bioaccumulate. I mean, I'm not going to go through the hundreds of other reports. I'm just going to hit a few of those. So even when they have to admit this, I mean, we sent Jakari Jackson and others out there last year. We should send them again to cover the water shortage and the radiation. And we would go up to the water, and it'd be 120 times what they say safe here, and 50 times here, and 30 times there. And then they sent government crews out, and we were in the San Francisco Chronicle, you name it, a week later going, well, these conspiracy theorists said there was higher radiation, and they're right, but it's not a problem, kooks. Not a problem, just 120 times, the safe level. What? And they go, you don't know how to run those field meters. Those aren't Geiger counters. Same difference. Didn't matter. The point was it was massively increased, but you're not an expert. Well, we can go buy a calibrated machine, 3 of them, different brands. They showed the same thing. A lady catches a fish, it's just off the chart, 200 times or something. All right, let's go to our guest, Jerry Peterman. I've had medical doctors, radiologists on so many, but he's the expert because he talks to all of them. FukushimaUpdateReport.com is probably the leading site, clearinghouse of real information to break this down. He's an engineer in TV and radio, and he also has the first microcomputer-powered micro. He's just a very interesting engineer. I'm not going to get into all of it. And he works with production, scientific advances, and such other varied disciplines as communication, transportation, alternative fuels, environmental waste disposal, satellite-delivered electronic store shelf advertising, electrical power generation, anti-aging, food and science, wind turbine technologies, FukushimaUpdateReport.com. And he's got the people on the ground in California, people on the ground in Japan, and he joins us now. You heard my little intro, sir, but what do you make of the media and the government admitting but saying it's the first time radiation has reached when they know that's not the case? And what are the real levels that we're seeing? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Alex. I think the thing that's most obvious is this is very similar to Brave New World, where something goes in and rewrites the news. That's what they're doing, is just, oh, that's not what we said, we're rewriting it. We're looking at off the coast of California, and the rate of 7 becquerels of radiation per cubic meter of seawater, and that's quite a bit. It's not going to probably give you cancer immediately, but over a long period of time, you don't want to be eating fish in that condition. You just don't. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. It raised when they first started detecting it in the air in April or May of 2011. They began to reduce or increase the amount that was acceptable. The U.S. Nuclear Agency began to increase that. So, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Break down your research, because it's so wide and so huge. What are the real experts saying?
Real experts saying we're in a world of hurt. We have something that is going to be around for the next several hundred generations. We're dealing with a runaway situation that no one knows how to deal with. I've written up something called Insane Things About Fukushima. And initially, everybody thought, oh, well, we'll have this contained in a year or two. We'll go in and contain the material and all this. And oh yeah, it's probably still in the containment vessel. All this different core material they call corium. It's a mixture of all the radionuclides in the plant. And truth of the matter is, nobody ever went into this thing and took a look at it. And now it's been 4 years since this quote accident. And now what? We have a situation where TEPCO's plant chief just in March made the statement that it's going to be a 200-year wait before we have technology that even begins to know what to do with this thing. We have no viable method to deal with it. And there's so many uncertainties. We just really consider the problems insurmountable. And this could be possibly the worst possible result. Centuries could pass. One another plant executive said centuries may pass before humans find a way to deal with these molten cores. So we have no idea what to do. You see, the problem they're admitting now, after 4 years, the technology doesn't exist to deal with this. And so I was always a little bit in the dark as to what are we dealing with? How much material are we dealing with, and what is it? And we found that the reports now indicate that at least 5% of this is plutonium activated as MOX fuel. And MOX fuel was, some people say, illegally being used in there.
And that was the MOX 3 reactor that had the big mushroom cloud explosion. I was no engineer, but I looked at the online release designs and clearly said those are the rods being shot up through the air. And a year later, they admitted that they shot up to 2 miles away, but the government here and there covered it up. And so that's my big question. Before we walk through all this with the head of one of the leading organizations that's engaged in massive research, FukushimaUpdateReport.com, Jerry Peterman, why do the elites not seem to care? Why are they building more reactors? Why are they letting old ones rot and loading more fuel into them? I mean, it's almost like they want to kill everybody. I mean, what is wrong with the establishment?
I think we've, by the way, take a look at that very carefully. What is the color of hydrogen when it burns? Hydrogen is clear. It does not produce a yellow flash. The only thing that does produce a yellow flash in that kind of environment is some kind of nuclear conflagration.
And that's what Dr. Busby and other nuclear physicists have said here. And then, sure enough, universities outside of the government did the isotope test and said, yes, we show that fission occurred, correct?
That's correct. And now we have people, after we've got the admission that there was fission, now they're beginning to look, well, if there was fission, I'll bet we had some neutron radiation released. Oh, but we couldn't have had that because there was no fission. Well, we had fission. Okay, well, let's look for it. Well, they're finding that their estimate was 13 billion times lower than was actually released. In other words, there is 13 billion times more neutron radiation that's been released. And the significant part of that is that every particle of the wastewater that's stored on site has been subjected to neutron activation. And neutron activation is an interesting process. The radiation doesn't just go through the water. Every time a neutron hits a particle, let's say it's magnesium floating in the seawater, or iron, or copper, or whatever.
It's creating radioactive water.
Everything that it touches, a neutron touches, becomes radioactive. So you have got 144 million gallons of water stored on site, where every particle inside those containment vessels are radioactive.
And what is the half-life if this is plutonium radiation? I mean, we're not talking about cesium or something that breaks down in a few months, are we?
No, that's the neat thing about, and being facetious, the neat thing about nuclear power plants, they keep on giving. You can get the benefits of the pollution for a half-life of uranium is 4.2 billion years. So every time we create a nuclear power plant, we're creating a system that's going to produce waste that is going to last 4.2 billion years. Oh, that's the half-life. That means if it was 100 then, just using a number, in 4.2 billion years, it's going to be 50. So it
So it would
be,
take 8 billion plus years to become non-radioactive.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah, it'd be beyond the end of the universe.
So what is the nuclear industry thinking? Because when I was a kid and everything, I bought into the propaganda. Hey, don't listen to the commies. Nuclear power is great. But then Russia has them melting down, blowing up, Chernobyl, the cancers increase, all these leaking reactors. CBS News says 75% are leaking. We have news articles from the Atomic Energy Agency, as you know, saying 90+% are leaking. It's like they had problems before, but suddenly it seems like the establishment thinks it's good. I mean, are they space aliens that want to make the Earth radioactive? Because I'm trying to be logical here.
You know, I don't think you're too far off. I'm not saying they're space aliens, but I will say something's not right. These people are certifiable. If you've got a car that's smoking going down the road, you'd think that probably at some point it's going to stop, and it throws out pollution all the time. You get these things leaking. The common sense thing to do is fix them and keep going if you're going to be in that industry.
Exactly. And of course, I don't think it's aliens either. I'm just saying
No,
it's they're so destructive that if they're not really aliens that want to live in a radioactive environment, this doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense. You got to consider the premise of producing waste that lasts 4.5 billion years or 4.2 billion years just to create power for today. That really doesn't make sense either, but who's counting?
Sure, but I mean, if they could contain it even somewhat safely, but they just 91% of the plants are leaking, and it's getting worse. And these plants are supposed to stay open 30 years. A lot of them are now into their 40th plus year. And of course, for folks that don't know, the radiation just eats these plants. They're falling apart. Whistleblower. I mean, in the old days, they would poison plant workers if they warned the public about a small leak. Nowadays, they just go, "Hey, we don't care."
We don't care. Now, I'll ask you a question. I bet you know this from your research. Where is the fuel stored, since we don't use Yucca Flats? Where is the fuel stored in the United States for reactors that spent fuel?
They're generally stored, I think, about 85% of the time, last time I saw, at the reactor sites.
Yes. And I can tell you for absolute certain that most reactors have more fuel stored at their locations than Fukushima had stored in their situations. Now, the chance of us having some kind of tsunami is probably not going to happen. But then again, we have several reactors in the Ohio Basin and out on California fault lines that are sitting on top of earthquake fault zones, which that took a lot of common sense to do.
I was going to ask you again. I've seen the global maps of where they store the stuff, whether it's the U.S., Japan, or even, well, they only seem to want to store them on earthquake lines. Is that a fun joke, or what's that?
I have no idea, but you have to wonder where it's stored now. We've dumped 40,000 tons of nuclear material, depleted uranium, and that term is not accurate. It's still 30% radioactive. We dumped that on Iraq and Afghanistan.
And don't forget the Navy, under orders for 30 years, dumped it all off the U.S. coast, both east and west.
Yeah, I don't think you have too much problem if you're down 10 or 15,000 feet in the ocean at the bottom. It's going to sit there for a while, but that really wasn't very bright either.
I shouldn't laugh. This is just crazy.
I mean, what can you do if you don't laugh in irony? What are you gonna do? Cry about it? I mean, for God's sake, this is end of the world scenario for this thing. Alex, I did not know what amount of material we were dealing with in the molten cores. Let me tell you the size of a single molten core of the three. Those things are 30 to 47 feet across and 2 stories deep underneath each one of these. We're talking about something that is burning at 3,500 degrees, and it is the size of a small building. This is all one lump
And
of
update me on the
molten
specifics, because I saw the articles the last few months. They've been covering up leaks for 10 months. They say it's worse than ever at Fukushima.
Absolutely, it's worse than anything. And when you consider all three of these reactors, you're dealing with over 600,000 pounds of this material. And people say, well, that's a lot of pounds. I can't wrap my head around it. Okay, go out in a Walmart parking lot or someplace and count 190 cars, and that's the amount of material that you have melted down, the equivalent of 190 automobiles melted down.
Because they were storing it right on top of the reactors. Jerry Peterman, FukushimaUpdateReport.com is our guest. We're going to get into where this crisis is going and the radiation levels rising in the U.S. My name is Alex Jones. Most of you know me from my syndicated radio program and my documentary films, as well as InfoWars Nightly News. When I got on air 20 years ago, I had discovered the globalist program, their plan to take over the world, and my focus went from running 6 miles every other day, swimming 2-3 miles a couple times a week, and lifting weights, to focusing on fighting the globalists. I've gone from 279 pounds all the way down to 235 pounds, and the weight's going off even faster. And it wasn't just that my weight loss accelerated. My muscle mass increased. My stamina, my energy levels exploded. Super Male has the key concentrated natural compounds that my body needed to go to the next level. Today is the day to take the InfoWarsLife.com challenge and to secure your bottle of Super Male or Super Female Vitality. Check them out today at InfoWarsLife.com or give our crew a call at 888-253-3139. It was just about 3 weeks ago I saw the headlines that a bunch of the underground facilities they built in New Mexico to store nuclear waste was collapsing into salt mines and was full of salt water and brine. And then a couple months ago I saw another report where they've got some stored out in California and Nevada, and those areas are collapsing as well. I mean, it's like a joke. It's like a joke. And I want to invite Jerry Peterman up for a full hour in the near future and on the Nightly News, because we should really cover this more. I've been hammering it, but then I'll go a year without really mentioning it. Then I'll kind of hammer it for a while. But we need to be aware of this, because I've had nuclear physicists on, medical doctors, cancer doctors on, and they go, yeah, this will increase our rates of cancer, and it already has. But I've talked to folks that lived in Europe during Chernobyl, who were in Italy and other areas, for 6 months to a year. They ate produce from the U.S., powdered milk from other areas. They didn't eat the vegetables for 6 months to a year because they knew it was bioaccumulating from Chernobyl all over Europe. Nowadays, they don't warn anybody, even though there were some levels over 200 times higher in some of the spinach and stuff that was tested in 2011, 2012. And as our guest said, the FDA would come out with the EPA and others and say, you know what? We're just going to raise it and say it's safe. Why not? See, they didn't even try to avoid it. Hey, if you got fast-growing cells and you're a child, you don't want to get cancer when you're 35 or 40. Sorry, farmers, you're going to have to, get rid of this produce. No, they didn't want to do that. So the world changed, folks, from Europe not feeding people for 6 months to a year their food to now just, you know what? I mean, even the Soviets had people move out of the Ukraine and areas of Russia nearby Chernobyl. Now it's just stay next to Fukushima, and they got Monbiot on the left and others on the right, like Ann Coulter, come out saying, you ought to go in the reactor. It's good for you. So for the next 6-7 minutes, sir, you've got the floor. Instead of me asking the questions, because you really are a clearinghouse, talking to the scientists, you name it. What is the latest on Fukushima? Where is it going and the other reactors? And is there any sanity? Because now I see all these leftist groups pushing micro reactors in cities and how homes might have them in the future and cars. I mean, these people seem to be tripling down like the vaccine makers as it shows, you know what? We're going to get everybody more vaccines as it shows it's hurting people. It just seems like an arrogance. So where is all this going?
I hate to say it, but I think we're all, beer's cold and the game is on. Who the blank cares? We're so mesmerized by the media to watch Dancing with the Stars or, the latest Star Wars movie or whatever it is out there. I did a survey in, I did a survey, sorry about that, did a survey in Pflugerville at a nice mall. And I asked 100 people about Fukushima. And of the 100 people, 30 had heard about it. And of those 30, only 5 realized that it was of any consequence whatsoever. And one fellow told me it was really, really great because his friends all liked it. And I was a little taken back. I said, why? And he said, it's that new sushi place out on 183. Okay. I smiled and thanked him. And one lady blessed me out for not being very well educated since it was over with in 2010. So we have too many things that take our mind off of what we really should be doing. And frankly, I remember my father being upset with 5% federal income tax. What would he think now? And I don't think there's anybody left who will go out and demonstrate in the streets for anything because we're pretty well convinced that none of what we do matters anymore. And, children, if you ask children, they all think, grade school, basically junior high or high school, they think they're going to be dead anyway. Things are bad and we've got people scared to the bone. What can you do when you're frightened? I gave a list, made a list of things that I felt like, what can we do? A few health things, not eat fish and stuff like that. But I said, one of the things about the average person buying a radiation detector, I don't think it's important to do that for one reason. They don't understand what they're looking at. But the main thing is, in the United States, we are fed so much fear that I think over the long run, fear is going to do more biological damage to us as a society than the radiation that we're going to have over the next 10 years. An estimate of 100,000 people die of cancer from Fukushima, an elevated rate. But I think fear is going to take its toll as well. Nobody knows how to measure that.
Well, Jerry, I think you've hit the nail on the head here. They've given us learned helplessness and terrified us over things like terrorism, where deer jumping out in front of your car kill more every year than that. So we're scared of all this stuff like great white sharks eating us. Statistic shows one of the biggest fears out there. But 5 people a year get killed by them. It's basically almost impossible out of 7.5 billion people to be killed by one. I mean, it's like finding a leprechaun. But people are scared of that. Meanwhile, real threats people can't seem to get focused on. No. And they just think you're trying to scare them like everything else because they feel powerless. But the truth is, we go through these times where it seems like nothing's happening, and suddenly there's a mass awakening and things change. The big problem is we have an elite that doesn't want the public to be active, so the elite can do whatever they want, and the elite themselves, I think, are so decadent that they become so megalomaniacal that they think they're invincible. And I think the radiation levels spiking and all the leaks is a symptom of the disease of an elite that have become so inbred and so decadent that a lot of their writings talk about, if we don't merge with machines and live forever, so what? Let's just blow the earth up. I mean, I think it's evil is what we're dealing with here.
I can't question that. Alex, I told you a long time ago that I felt like people who work for TEPCO or various companies like that are serving soulless entities. And it still comes down to the Supreme Court has declared that a corporation is a person and can spend whatever money it wants on boats and everything else. But if that is a person, there is no body, there's no physical entity there. So what we spiritually would say, there is no soul. So that means there's no conscience. And we are out there serving these companies. The people who are in the nuclear field are, and you're serving something that has no conscience, and it has got to be one of the scariest things on the planet. What else can you tell me that lasts 4.2 billion years that produces a waste? There's nothing on the planet
I think you've hit it. That's it. We have produced people with all the food and all the liberty we have that are so decadent and so disconnected from the ground reality of the real world that they just don't care anymore about anybody but themselves. And I don't lionize the veterans, but people that have been in combat, people that have been through serious things, or aid workers that have been seen starving children, and folks like that, who people who've had real suffering or seen it, they at least get wanting to save freedom and wanting to stand up for others and wanting to try to be honorable. Doesn't mean they're perfect. And that's why the system demonizes them, because they know veterans have actually been in the real world. And they want us all to be these insulated TV heads that aren't part of reality. And I think that's it. It's a world of spectators that now look at those of us that just want to build a future. I mean, ants save food for the winter. I'm not even saying we're special. We're just not trying to kill ourselves. And they're so divorced from life that they think we're the bad guys. Because, like you said, you had people chew you out going, that was over in 2010. That problem's solved. When you went out, and it didn't even happen in 2010, you dumb woman. It's the arrogance of these people where their eyes glaze over and they smile and they have these dead shark eyes and they go, oh, yeah. It's like they revel in it. But I guarantee you start choking them, they're going to beg for the police and squeal and cry. It's like they're so self-centered that they don't have any nerve endings into the universe, is the way I describe them.
I totally agree, Alex. They're so disconnected that they don't realize that they're poisoning. I have a very close friend who said, don't these people realize that they're being affected by this material? He was referring to chemtrails and all the nuclear pollution and that kind of thing, Fukushima and all. Don't they realize that they're also being affected, and their children? And I said, I don't understand. I guess it's like the old whiskey ads that used to be in magazines that always had a skull painted somewhere in the ice cube or something, because those people who drank heavy liquor supposedly had a death wish, and it was a standard thing to put a skull somewhere in the ad. Maybe that's why it's called Skull and Bones. It's a death wish.
That's it. It's a metaphysical rule they've got to tell you. I know you're close to Austin, and last time you were on about a year ago, I invited you here. Please come in the next 2 weeks. We'll do a whole hour and a half, 2 hours, and take calls. You can bring any exhibits. Get here beforehand. We can put them up on the big screen for TV viewers and really do a special report. So, Jerry, I hope you can come here in the next few weeks.
I'd be happy to. Thank you for your work.
Well, thank you, sir. We're all just common sense trying to survive here. God bless you. And, he's thanking me, I'm thanking him. It'd be like if I looked out and my neighbor's house was on fire, I'd run over and bang on their door and see if anybody was home, and I'd call the fire department. I don't deserve a medal for that. I mean, he doesn't deserve a medal, but compared to the general public, I guess we do. We've got to hold up that that's what you're supposed to do.